Have you ever wondered if sex creates the intimacy in good relationships or if it's the other way around? Let's find out in my interview with intuitive counselor and therapist Helen Hillix. Welcome to Divine Feminine Voices, where we are defining and exploring divine feminine consciousness. My guest today is Helen Hillix, who is the creator of the Fulfilled Woman Circle, empowering women to create massive breakthroughs in self-love, intimacy skills, and sacred sexuality. Welcome, Helen. I'm so excited you're here.
Thank you, Misa. It's always such a pleasure to talk to you.
Oh, well, I love this topic, and I want to get us started with my question, the question I ask everyone. When we say divine feminine consciousness, what does that concept mean to you?
Well, honestly, I feel like the concept of the divine feminine consciousness is an effort to energize and empower women to realize that they have creative powers and divine powers, and to break it away from, in a way, to differentiate it, maybe a better way of saying it, to differentiate it from the divine masculine power. Honestly, I believe it's all the same. I believe that it's all part of the oneness of consciousness, period. And that because the divine masculine has been so associated with the patriarchy and religious domination of men, that there is a need for women to distinguish the divine feminine. And there's nothing wrong with that, as long as we understand that it's all part of the integrated divine oneness energy.
Yes. And what you're describing is really what I know to be more akin to the Chinese view of it, the ancient Chinese view of yin and yang, that they are both energies of consciousness, and we're just pulling it apart a little bit, as you well stated, to equalize the playing ground a little bit, be more aware. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So can you describe some of the reasons that women might be feeling repressed in expressing that consciousness within themselves?
Well, we could talk about that for about a century. As long as there is recorded history, there has been, for the most part, I mean, there are lapses in this, nothing is universally true like that. So there have been tremendous, powerful efforts to keep women in their place and to have them only manifest subservient, passive, supportive, being of service to men, and being dominated by men, and kept without power. Women couldn't vote until 100 years ago in the United States. I mean, that just blows my mind. Women couldn't own property until, I don't know, 200 years ago, maybe less, in Europe. So it's no mystery why women have begun to rebel against that and say, no, we get to have equal power. And the truth is, conscious men welcome that, because weak women cannot support men. Weak women cannot partner with men to create a different world where everybody gets their needs met. And if women aren't getting their needs met, men aren't getting their needs met either, because we are part of the oneness. So it's to me, it's not a system that is against men so that it can be for women. It's really a system that needs to be dismantled so that everybody can get their needs met in a much more powerful, deep way, where everybody's thriving and where everybody has a voice, where everybody's gifts are honored. The power of creating a different world is exponentially magnified by women being empowered. The same thing goes for, Blacks or Latinos or Asian or transgender. It's like everybody's empowerment is my empowerment, and vice versa.
Yeah, we are so deeply connected, and I really appreciate what you're saying, that if one of us is feeling unempowered, if we're feeling dissatisfied as though our needs are met, it's really contributing to the whole feeling that things aren't right. Things are out of balance. And we experience that. We experience that in the bedroom, right? If
Mm-hmm.
there isn't a true balance of respect and appreciation and depth of intimacy with each other, you feel it. You
Yeah.
experience that. But can we talk about that a little bit? You and I talked earlier about kind of the beliefs of patriarchy and how they bleed right through into all of our relationships. The way that we see divine energy plays a role in right down into the bedroom. Would you talk about that a little bit with us, that intimacy?
Well, how we see our world paradigm, our cosmic awareness, if you want to call it that, it shines through in everything we do. And if you believe that as a woman, your role is to be subservient and to let the man be the leader, then that is going to show up in the bedroom in terms of you not having a voice and not taking ownership of your own pleasure and not saying what you like and what you don't like. And then, of course, that creates resentment and shut down in the bedroom. And you're never going to have the most fulfilling, fun, sacred, connected sexual experience if that's the paradigm, because there's only one person whose needs seem paramount, and it doesn't work. That just doesn't work. So I love the saying in the emotional intelligence world that the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And that is kind of what I'm saying, is the way you think of the world working is going to show up in everything you do. If you feel you don't have a voice and that you also don't have accountability to create equally, then that's going to show up in how you are in the bedroom. It's going to show up in how you parent. It's going to show up in how you are in the workforce. It's going to show up in how you do or do not hold your husband accountable or your lover accountable for what they're doing. And it's also going to show up in your own defensiveness when you're being held accountable for what you are or are not doing.
Yeah, it really, when we do that, it becomes an invitation for abuse. It becomes a kind of unspoken invitation that someone else is responsible for my welfare, not me. And I think as women, we're becoming more and more aware that when we do that, we pass that down through generations. We're passing that energy on, and then we create these daughters that become helpless women, right? We want them to be empowered. We want them to be creating their own happiness. So, you really spoke to our generations of women. 100 years ago, we couldn't vote. And we've had to really we've had to exercise our masculine energy and stand up for who we are, what's important to us, what we believe in, and what creates happiness. And that has been good for our communities. It's been really good for our families. I'm really appreciating what you're saying here, that these views that we've accepted, if we're not careful, if we're not examining them, and we're not being accountable for our own happiness, can become views that squash us, and we don't bring to the community what we are here to bring in this generation, right? How do we evolve if we aren't bringing what we have to bring?
Well, amen, sister. And the funny thing is, it so feeds into that unfortunate dynamic of women bashing men behind their backs. Because if we feel like we have no power to change things, it doesn't mean that we're going to just lie there and be happy that men are taking over. It means that we're going to, behind their back, we're going to bash them, but not take any accountability to fight what we think is unjust. So it doesn't lead to anything productive.
No, it doesn't. And this is our opportunity. And you and I have talked before about how important our role is in creating safety in the relationship. each our role is to create that safety. And I'm also hearing that if we want good lives, we want our needs to be fulfilled. We'll talk about that. How do we create greater safety? What's our responsibility here?
That's a really, really powerful question. How do we create safety? Well, the first thought that comes to mind is we create safety and we experience safety if we know that we're loved and we trust that the other person is being honest with us and that they can support us when we make mistakes. They're not going to throw us out of the tribe because we say something they don't agree with. So there is a sense of belonging, there is a sense of honesty, that you trust that other person is not just building up a bunch of resentments toward you, but that they're willing to come to you and tell you what's bothering them and see if you can, problem solve and negotiate, and come up with what you believe is for the highest good of all. And that common value of believing that you both embrace the spiritual principle of what is for the highest good of all, including each individual. If you have that core belief and you're both committed to that, then you have a sense of safety. You have a mutually agreed on goal that includes both of your needs and everybody else's.
Yeah. Yeah. And that does allow for a deeper experience with each other than you're going to have otherwise. Otherwise, you're playing roles out, right? But you're not deepening with each other.
Right, which goes back to it goes back to your original question of does sexuality create the intimacy or does intimacy create the sexuality? You may have some hot chemical connection sexually, but it can't be sustained and actually expanded on if you don't feel the safety of the foundation of the whole relationship. And I know we talked about this before, that sexuality in itself is not a big enough foundation for all the challenges of life to be held and nurtured in that one space. We have to create a foundation that can hold our whole life experience, including sexuality. So it's a long answer to say intimacy creates sexuality if you want it to be sustained and not just to be a way of getting off and having an orgasm in the moment.
And I hear that more and more from conscious women. Helen, the women that I work with, they're interested in deep, intimate, lasting relationships. They may have had their time with, the fun in bed. They're ready for something deeper. So this is really important to recognize that it's the depth of intimacy. Do you advocate slowing down the process a little bit? What's been your experience with that? What have you observed with your clients? Does it help for us to slow down a little bit? Take a little time getting to bed?
Well, I would say the short answer is yes, it helps if you can slow down a little bit, because if you have sex very quickly, then you have the illusion that there is some sort of bond there. And, if you enjoyed the experience and you feel that physical connection, you want more of it. And oftentimes what happens is then the maintenance of that sexual connection becomes the goal rather than discovery of whether we are a true match or not. And so if you can slow it down and not have sex quite so quickly, then you can be much more authentic and exploring whether there is an innate match or there isn't, whether you're ultimately going to feel safe with that person or not. Do they have the consciousness to be able to see their own part? How do they handle it when something happens that's upsetting? You can discover so much about that other person that will enable you to evaluate whether you're a good match or not, if you can slow down the sex part. But we are all longing for the experience of oneness. And we have been taught that, sex is going to be the great connector. And so we just throw ourselves into it. I mean, that's kind of modern culture. But it doesn't really make intimacy at all. It's just a physical experience. There's nothing wrong with it. I tell my clients, if that's what you want to do, go ahead, and then we'll talk about the aftermath that way. Because I try to tell them to slow down and they don't do it, and I say there's no shame in that. I've done it more times than I can count. And then we'll just work with what you learn after the fact. But it just makes it harder. It makes it more painful. There's a lot of needless pain when you do it that way, because then you're very invested in an outcome rather than being able to just discover and explore.
I had a client a few weeks ago talk about how, in fact, I've had a couple of clients talk about how COVID has actually benefited them in that way. They tend to want to, the fire of the sex, they want to just get right in there. And it has slowed down their process so that they're actually getting to know each other. And they're making different decisions about whether this is an individual that I want that kind of intimacy with. Or
I've had the same exact experience. I've said, people are complaining about it. Oh, I hate the online dating. And I said, oh, it's fantastic, because it's a built-in way of you slowing things down and getting to know the person. So I'm with you.
Yeah, I think there's something awesome in being able to see if your intimacy really does exist beyond the sex. If it does, your wisdom is right there. You've got a greater container, and it will only deepen the sexual experience and hold the sexual experience. That's what I'm hearing. Is that a fair summation?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. So, Helen, what hot tip would you like to leave our viewers with today? What's the one thing that you would offer to them in terms of creating greater intimacy and deeper relationships with their sexual relationships and in their bonds with primary partners or multiple individuals, whatever that you're exploring?
Well, that's a great question, and it's not something we've discussed before, but what comes to my mind right now is to get clear about your intention. What is your vision? What is it that you're really looking for? Do you want that feeling of safety and sacred sexuality, or are you looking for, a series of rushes that reinforce the fact that you're attractive? I mean, there is no shame in whatever your intention is, but don't fool yourself that you're looking for sacred sexuality if you're not. Or on the other hand, don't fool yourself that you're fine with casual sex when you really are not. It's like, get clear, take the time, do some mindfulness practices. What is it that you really is your vision of what you want? And fight for that. Don't settle for something that really isn't your intention, because that's never going to make you happy. So intention to me is always the first step of having a life that is aligned, is that you have to know what you're going for in order to see whether what you're doing fits with your intention or doesn't fit with your intention.
Perfect. Oh, Helen, and you have a gift for our viewers that I think is going to help them get to that. Am I right? I'm being a little intuitive here.
I hope so.
Would you like to talk about that gift?
Sure. It's a sacred sexuality workbook that I've put together that helps you go back to your earliest education about what is sexuality and what were you taught to believe about sexuality, and how has that impacted your actions and your intentions and the outcome of relationships, and to help you get clear again about your intention. What is it that you really want to co-create? And then it offers you some tools to support that practice.
Excellent. I had a feeling that book was going to do it. That's the perfect gift. So I want to encourage everyone, go to the link below, go grab the gift that Helen has for you. Also, be sure to check out her Fulfilled Woman Circle, empowering you as a woman, and see if that resonates with your heart. I'm just so grateful for the work you're doing, Helen. It's deep, it's powerful, and you are amazingly accepting of where any individual is in their journey. And it's one of the things I love about you. So thank you for sharing your wisdom today.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure connecting to you, and I feel the same way about the work you're doing. So
awesome. All right, everyone. So be sure to check out the links below. And as always, subscribe to my channel for more insights into the divine feminine and go deeper into the journey at my websites. All the links are below. And thank you to all of you for the beautiful work you are doing to raise feminine consciousness on our planet. Goodbye, everyone.